Thank you for joining. So today let me continue with my talk on Sawaki Kodo Roshi's To You. Last time, 2 weeks ago, we stopped on page 64. The last quote of the 10th chapter goes like this. Nenbutsu, practiced with a peaceful mind, is true Nenbutsu. Zazen, practiced with a peaceful mind, is genuine Zazen. Nenbutsu is a practice that's quite common in Japan, but I think also in China and in Korea. In Japan, it's usually not practiced in the Zen sect or Zen school of Buddhism, but in a different school called the Pure Land school. And in Japanese, it would be recited Namu Amida Butsu. I think in Chinese, it's more like Namo Amitofu. It means I take refuge in the Buddha Amitabha. And probably most of you are familiar with the fact that in Buddhism, actually, there's many Buddhas. The historic Buddha Shakyamuni is supposed to have found enlightenment 2,500 years ago. And according to Japanese tradition, precisely on this day, December 8th, when he saw the morning star rise and he sat under the Bodhi tree and he saw the morning star, something happens. He realized enlightenment. But according to Buddhist teaching, there were many Buddhas who realized enlightenment before Shakyamuni. And they realized enlightenment millions or billions of years before Shakyamuni, maybe even before this universe came into existence. Before the Big Bang, there were different universes, and in those universes, there were different Buddhas. Anyway, Amitabha is the name of one of them. And Amitabha is very popular in East Asia because, unlike Shakyamuni, Amitabha promised to save anybody who is not able to find salvation by himself. Amitabha promised to save anybody who would recite his name and take refuge to him, even if it's only 10 times. And that's why a couple of centuries ago, this practice of chanting the name of Amitabha became very popular in China, I guess, but also in Japan, because people had the feeling that we can sit and meditate as long as we want, but we will never become Buddhas. But if Amitabha promised to save us, then let's try it and chant his name. So the practice of Zazen and Nenbutsu, chanting the name of Amitabha, they sound quite different, and they are quite different. But whenever Sawaki Roshi is referring to Nenbutsu, he's doing it to pointing out the parallels between these two practices. Although they sound quite different and they are quite different, there are many parallels. And the parallel that Sawaki Roshi is trying to get to is when you chant the name of Amitabha, you don't do it with the attitude that I will chant your name 10 times and now you save me. It's not a business deal. You have to do it unconditionally. It's an act of faith. Even if you don't know if Amitabha even exists, or if this is all just a made-up story, you just do it unconditionally. You just chant it for the sake of chanting. And the same with Zazen. We don't practice in the hope to get enlightenment at some point in the future. If I do Zazen wholeheartedly for 3 years or maybe 5 years, I finally get my Kensho. That's not the attitude. You just sit for the sake of sitting, unconditionally. So that's the parallel here. And Sawaki Roshi says, Nenbutsu practiced with a peaceful mind is true Nenbutsu. Zazen practiced with a peaceful mind is genuine Zazen. Peaceful mind. I didn't check the original, but I guess in Japanese it's anjin. And anjin can also mean a mind that has found peace. So it's also a word for salvation. The goal of most, if not all, religions is to find peace of mind, salvation. So what he's saying there, if you practice Nenbutsu or if you practice Zazen, you have to do it with peace of mind. Otherwise, it won't be genuine Nenbutsu or Zazen. And the question, of course, is, so where do I find this peace of mind that is required? I also would like to have it. And then I'm happy to practice Nenbutsu or Zazen with this peace of mind. But first, please give me my peace of mind. That's why Sawaki Roshi continues. Nenbutsu practiced in order to get peace of mind isn't true Nenbutsu. Zazen practiced in order to get peace of mind isn't true Zazen. So if you do it exactly for the purpose of, I want to be saved, I want enlightenment, I want finally attain nirvana, you will never attain nirvana. And I think it's a little bit like with happiness. You could say that only a happy life is worth living, but leading a happy life and living every day with the idea, I finally want to get happy someday. I finally want to, how do you say, realize the American dream and become happy too. You will never be happy. So what does happiness mean? In my view, happiness means to unconditionally accept that you are unhappy as well. Or some people say that you have nothing to fear but fear itself. But if you fear fear itself, you will always have something to fear. Real fearlessness means that you don't even feel fear. You're not even afraid to be in fear. At some days you might be afraid. You feel fear, and that's okay. And if that's okay, then you are actually fearless. Or when you sit, sometimes you get angry. I think it all happens to us that we remember last week somebody, that jerk at my workplace, he said this and that. He had no right to tell me that. And you get angry during Zazen. And a couple of minutes later, you realize you're even more angry at yourself than at that jerk. Because you know, I want to meditate now. I'm not supposed to be angry, but I am angry. I shouldn't be angry. And now you're even 10 times as angry. So what's the way out of that anger? Stop being angry at yourself for being angry. And in a way, you could say that's peace of mind. The moment you don't have a problem anymore with fear, angry, being unhappy, you accept that. You're totally fine with that. And in that moment, you're not afraid anymore, you're not angry anymore, you're not unhappy anymore. So anyway, Nenbutsu or Zazen are not practices to make us happy or enlightened, but you have to do it unconditionally. And there's a last sentence. When eating as well, Buddha's practice is perfecting the meal through a perfected manner of eating. This doesn't seem to fit to the preceding two sentences, although it's part of the same quote. When eating as well, Buddha's practice is perfecting the meal through a perfected manner of eating. In Zen, of course, the way you eat, the manner of eating is very important. But it reminds me of a quote that is, I think, somewhere in the same book, where Sawaki Roshi says, We don't eat in order to shit, and we don't shit in order to produce manure. And I think that's what he's trying to get here. When you eat, you just eat. That's the attitude of eating. You don't eat so that you can go to the toilet later. You don't do it with the goal of shitting later. And you don't shit in order to produce manure. You eat, and when you eat, you just eat. And when you go to the toilet, you just do your toilet business there. And in Antaiji, later we would use the manure to spread it on the fields so that new rice or vegetables can grow. But when we eat, we don't do it with the intention that we want to produce manure so that we can produce more vegetables and later eat them again so that we can shit and produce manure again. When you eat, you just eat. When you shit, you just shit. When you take a bath, you just take a bath. And you do it in an unconditional way. You do it completely. You give yourself completely to the action. And that's true for Nenbutsu, and that's true for Zazen as well. Maybe I also start with chapter 11 before we start the question and answer session. Chapter 11 has the title, To You Who Wants to Strengthen Your Hara with Zazen. Hara is the belly area, and I think it's also important in martial arts that you have a strong hara. You put your energy down here in the tanden area, about an inch below the navel. And at the time of Sawaki Roshi, so that means 50, 60, 70 years ago, obviously there were lots of books and I don't know, maybe also TV programs about Zen. There was the Zen boom, and people said with Zen you can strengthen your hara. Today people might say with Zen you can develop your mindfulness. You can become more efficient. At the time they said you can strengthen your hara. And as you can imagine, Sawaki Roshi was pretty critical of that. We don't do it in order to attain something, so he said. Through the Zen, you strengthen your hara. That's what people say. Knowing that this hara isn't worth a damn is real hara and real Zazen. So connecting to the quote before, to know that peace of mind is worth nothing. And even if for the rest of your life you will never attain peace of mind, so be it. So be it. And even if you fall into hell after death, so be it. That's real peace of mind. And the person that has attained that peace of mind is already in nirvana and doesn't have to be afraid of hell. But if you sit with the idea, there's one thing I don't want to happen, and that's going to hell. Or you sit and there all these worries come up, and you tell yourself, I must not worry, I'm supposed to be happy. You will never be happy, you will always worry. So real happiness means it's totally okay to worry. When worry comes, let's worry. Let's worry together. And you might realize the next moment there's really nothing to worry about. Okay, how about questions from your side? Anything you would like to ask or share? If you have something, now would be the time. Any questions? Anything you would like to share?
Okay, if I may ask a question.
Yes, please.
So last week, with your answer, you seem to make a difference between being mindful or mindfulness and living fully on the present, or the concept of when you eat, you just eat. So there is any differences in these concepts, or the same? And if there are any difference, which are?
I think I talked about that last week as well. Depends on what you understand with mindfulness. If you just mean that you're present in whatever you do, like when you eat, you're completely there and eat. There's nothing wrong with that. But I have the feeling that some people, and that also was true for myself maybe 2 decades ago, they have this idea that whatever they do, they also need to observe themselves while they do it. So a little bit like a hotel detective that's always watching the monitors. Is there any dubious activity going on? So you eat, and at the same time, you observe yourself while eating. And am I really tasting the carrots? Am I really aware of how many pieces of tofu are in the miso soup? So you start counting the pieces of tofu. You start counting the carrots. And at one point, you're so busy observing that you don't really taste the miso soup anymore. Or you start to judge yourself, how mindful am I? Am I really mindful enough? And that's not what I understand with true mindfulness. So if you develop that kind of mindfulness, that you're always separated from what you do because you think I need to have a distance so that I can observe myself, then I would say give that up and just eat when you eat. Just wash the dishes when you wash the dishes. Don't try it in an extra mindful way. Joseph is raising his hand. Joseph, please.
Yeah, thank you. Really great quotes and great talk as well, and particularly appropriate for a time when we remember the Buddha's enlightenment. Um, and it kind of reminded me that the other week I came across, it was a quote from Uchiyama Roshi, who said it was something like chanting Kanon's name, so not Amitabha, but chanting the Bodhisattva's name, and Zazen are two sides of the same coin, or something like that. But I suppose that made me, reading that quote and hearing you talk today on these quotes from Kodo Sawaki Roshi, makes me ask the question, does anyone in Antaiji actually chant Nenbutsu or chant Kanon's name? Is that like a typical part of practice? Even if we understand that maybe they're similar to Zazen in this way.
Mm-hmm. Not really. You might know that in Japan there's 3 Zen schools. Soto and Rinzai are most famous, and then there's also Obaku school, which is more or less the same as Rinzai, but it came to Japan a couple of centuries later, about 300 years ago. And in Obaku, you do Zazen and Nenbutsu together, or probably you don't do it while you do Zazen, but both is practice. So you do it parallel, because that's something that developed in China later. And as far as I know, in China today, monks practice Zazen, but they also practice chanting the name of Amitabha. But it's not common in Japanese Zen temples outside of the Obaku-shu. It's not common in Antaiji. But what is common is reading kind of sutras which are centered on Kannon. For example, Emme Juku Kannon Gyo is a very famous short one. What was it? Kanze on Namu Butsu Yo Butsu in Yo Butsu and Buppo So and Jolaku Gajo Chonen Kanze on Bonen Kanze on Nennen Jushinki Nennen Fuli Shin. That's the whole sutra, and you can repeat it over and over again. We don't do that in Antaiji as well, but you do it in other temples, and it has a kind of mantra-like quality. And I heard of people that when they were really in, for example, strong pain during Zazen, that silently in their mind, they would kind of chant this sutra. I don't know what Uchiyama Roshi is thinking about when he said that. Because I don't think it was a common practice at the time in Antaiji, because if it was, then probably it would have continued after that. Um, mm. So it's certainly not a common practice to do it during Zazen, but for example, one thing that Uchiyama Roshi says in the 7 points, like his last Teisho at Antaiji that he held in 1975 or so, there's these 7 points for practice. And one is that Zazen needs to be rooted in the practice of Seigan and Sange in Japanese. Seigan is vow and Sange is repentance. And the vow is to live as a bodhisattva. And repentance occurs when you realize I'm not a bodhisattva. I try my best, I might try my best, but actually I'm not Avalokiteshvara, I'm not Kannon-san. And this chanting the name of Kannon or having this mindset, the attitude of taking refuge of Kannon is, for one thing, kind of like what comes out of repentance. I need your help. I need your help. But also the vow. I'd like to be one of your 1,000 arms. Please use me as one of your 1,000 arms. I'm not sure if I can do it, but please, with your help, let me do it. But also, I mean, during like yesterday night, Rohatsu ended in the cold of Rohatsu. Sometimes there's this, although it's on the surface, it's contradictory to the spirit of Zen, where you say, well, if I don't become a Buddha, there's no Buddha to help me. There's also this side where you say, I can't do this, please, please help me. And you don't even know to whom you could address that, but some might address this to Avalokiteshvara, come on, please, please help me, please help me. And it's exactly in these moments of surrender that often we realize, oh, it's very easy. It's easy. Zazen is doing Zazen. In those moments where we surrender and give up the idea that I need to do Zazen, I need to make an effort. The moment you realize I can't do it, please, please, somebody help me. Somebody help me. And it's in those moments that sometimes you realize, oh, Zazen is helping me. Kannon is manifesting in the form of Zazen. Zazen is doing Zazen for me. So surrender isn't talked often about in Zen, but it's actually, I think it's a key point, surrendering. And of course, you can surrender to Kannon-san.
I don't think I have a follow-up question, but I think I'm going to be thinking about this for a while. So thank you.
Okay, well, next week you have another chance. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share?
I have a question also. I was reading this book and I read the third chapter because I was looking for something that kind of applies to me right now. And the title of the third chapter is To You Who Are Totally Exhausted from Fighting with Your Spouse. So this is kind of a pain point for me right now. And then this book doesn't really do much of a help.
Yes.
Because it is just saying like you're an idiot anyway because you got married. But I was wondering if like the collective consciousness of this group has some idea or some experience of how you can make it into an opportunity instead of lamenting about like fighting and like having conflicts, and how we could use this to kind of as a mirror, because when you live by yourself, everything's great, right? I'm doing great, everything's wonderful, I'm awesome, or at least at that point when you come clear with yourself and you're like, okay, yeah, this is nice. But then when there's another person in your life and then there's a life partner who's kind of mirroring many things back to you, you start questioning a lot of things. And yeah, I wonder how people here deal with it, if they have some experience with this or some advice.
Well, your invitation is to everybody who wants to share something, but maybe if I can say something from my side, sometimes I say that being married is like a lifelong session. And Sawaki Roshi, of course, wasn't married, so he had no experience of this lifelong session. But it's often like it's like the third day of a session, but it's not one day. It can be a year, it can be decades. This I want to get out of here, but you could get out of there, but you decide, no, I'm gonna stay here. But you're confronted with yourself in the form of your partner. Often he's mirroring you, she is mirroring you. You want to change that person, but you also have to realize, well, I can't change that person. I can't change that person. If I can change anything, then I might try to change myself. But so in a way, being married is a koan, is a session. Being single is probably much easier, but that's also one of the nice things of being married, that you have opportunity to practice day by day. But maybe there's something else that you want to share about this. Anybody else? Bernhard.
Yeah, I once read something which I found quite useful. If you're in a situation that feels difficult, you should ask two questions. Do I really want to stay in this situation? And if you say yes, then think about things you could do to improve the situation.
Yes.
So that's basic thing. Not. Of course, you could leave, as Moho just said. You could leave the situation, but if you really decide, and don't think you must stay in the situation. You don't have to stay in the situation. But if you decide on your own will to stay in the situation, what can I do to improve it? That I found quite helpful. Yeah.
I think you mentioned two questions, but that's only one, or?
No, yeah, you're right. You're right. I realized myself. It's just one question and one tip.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's two. Do I want to stay in the situation? And if the answer is yes, then what can I do to improve it? So that makes two. Yeah.
But then what's with the non-duality of good and bad, and what's good and what's bad? Then you just get into that spiral of things.
Yeah, I wanted to add perhaps that when you accept the situation, sometimes, not always, but sometimes the situation itself changes, because also the way, if you see the situation differently, you react differently, and then sometimes the situation changes. But at least also you can accepting the situation in a same way. Perhaps it's at least you are a bit better, and perhaps also the situation can change at the end.
Yes. But as Bernhard said, it doesn't mean that you must accept the situation. Sometimes it's abusive situation. So there's also the freedom that you say, no, I won't accept it. But as you said, from my experience, often, totally accepting a situation changes it completely. And that's often the case with pain or desperation, anxiety, feeling unhappy. Sometimes just accepting that changes it completely. But not always, not always. Okay, it's already 1 minute past 9 here in Japan, so I would like to thank you very much. Next week I'm gonna be back and talk about Zen mind, beginner's mind. So I wish you a good week. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Schwan-san, for hosting us as always, and hoping to see you again next week, next Monday. Same time, same address, same password. See you. Bye.